Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to the Women's Forum. And tonight, I'm so happy to be here with two of my friends, Dr. Sood and Dr. Hemnes, to talk to you about leadership. So I'm Dr. Jean Elwing. I'm from the University of Cincinnati, where I've been at that location for about 2 decades. And I'm a pulmonologist, and I am really interested in this topic because I think we don't talk about it enough. And many of us don't really know how to navigate this. So I'm hoping with Dr. Sood and Dr. Hemnes, we can talk through some of those important points. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and give a little bit of background about themselves. So Dr. Sood?
So I am also pulmonary critical care. I have been in this space for about 30 years now. Unlike Dr. Elwing, I have moved quite a bit. I did my fellowship at University of North Carolina, where I started the PH clinic. Then I moved to the Ohio State University and built the pulmonary vascular disease program there. And now I'm at UC Davis, leading the advanced lung disease program. And my focus has been clinical care and clinical trials.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Hemnes?
Um, Good evening, everybody. So I'm Anna Hemnes, and I've been interested in pulmonary hypertension since I was an intern. That was actually 112 years ago. But I've been at Vanderbilt since 2006, and I'm now a professor of medicine there, and I'm the director of the Division of Allergy, Pulmonary, and Critical Care Medicine. Tonight, I'll give you opinions that are my own and not necessarily reflecting my institutional leadership positions. Um, I've been interested in pulmonary hypertension, as I mentioned, since my internship, and I have an NIH-funded research program, mostly focused on translational aspects of pulmonary vascular disease, which to me means that I include basic science techniques, including cell culture and animal models, as well as studies in humans and clinical trials. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for asking me.
No, thank you so much for being with us. So I think we all come from different backgrounds, but in the same space. And so hopefully that will complement what we talk about tonight. So I'm going to start with Dr. Sood. So Namita, you have led programs in pulmonary hypertension for years. So the question is, how do you build them? What's your philosophy when you start something new and start building teams?
So I think for me, it just started a little bit organically. I diagnosed my first patient with pulmonary hypertension, and that time only infusion therapy was available, and then sort of it grew from there. And the key was to sort of know what is needed to be delivered, what is needed to deliver quality care, consistent quality care for the disease state. So before you start, you want to be sure that you have all the things in place. For example, an echo lab that will get you an echo the type you want. You have nuclear med that will do the VQ scans for you. You have interventional radiology who's willing to work with you to do diagnostics and place lines and so forth. So you have all these sort of right people in place who are willing to work with you. And then you start small, but you also start with what you basically need. For example, having a nurse coordinator was absolutely important. My program first promised me a full-time, and then they said, you don't have enough work, so gave me part-time. But at least I had a person who could get started with me on that. So with the right space. So having the right support, you start small, and then you set certain metrics for yourself, right? So we said we were going to do things a certain way in a consistent way. And we borrowed from other programs like the transplant program, the multidisciplinary lung cancer programs that were kind of well developed at that time. We borrowed their workflows and developed our own. And we stuck to it, and we set some metrics that from the time the patient was going to be referred, we were going to see the patient within 2 weeks. And by three weeks, we should have a complete workup done and a diagnosis to the patient with a treatment plan. And we kept striving for that with whatever it took. So slowly and surely, it became a consistent workflow. We were able to move patients through our clinics and the hospital and maintain a certain level of quality. I think that's what led to the development of the program.
That is really, really important. We have to have the right ingredients to make things work. And really, a lot of work goes into making sure we have all of those working pieces at the quality we want. And I wanted that to be sort of an intro to what we're doing tonight, because really Dr. Sood was the one who thought about this and really made this group come together. So what we are doing tonight is something that is sponsored and supported by Gossamer, and we want to thank them sincerely for doing that. And we've come together to really be a focus group and talk about these things, about how to lead, what opportunities are out there for us, how to mentor, how we think this works best in our PH space. This is the Women's Forum, and it is led by me and Dr. Sood, with some wonderful members that you're going to meet along the way when we do these webinars. And our webinars have a very nice, cute name. They're the PHorward, because we're professionals in the heart and lung community talking about opportunities, resilience, wisdom, advancement, and development. And this is a series that we hope can support our efforts and dig a little deeper where our challenges might lie so we can work together to overcome some of them, and figure out maybe how to go around others to have the most success we can in this environment that we're working in pulmonary hypertension. So with that, I'm going to go back to another question for Dr. Sood. These type of organizations, groups, or initiatives are something that, we choose to be involved in. How did your work over the years with PHA and CHEST influence how you learned how to build teams like you just talked about?
Oh my gosh, a huge, huge influence in so many different ways, right? So I was fortunate enough that I got involved with CHEST when somebody actually threw my name in the hat to be part of the affiliates committee. And once you get there, then you meet a lot of people. I mean, number one, you meet a lot of people who are way, way smarter than you. And everybody brings a different kind of skill to the table. And basic things like how to run a meeting. I think I learned by watching others run a meeting, how to disagree to agree. I kind of learned on the table there, just interacting with people I'd never met before, and sort of coming up, with a plan to do things when people started with disagreement, but we ultimately came up with a cohesive plan how to do things. It gave me an opportunity to interact with other people, be part of a bigger national conversation. So with that, I got more ideas, which I could bring to the table and kind of implement in my own institute. So it was, I think, a very important, it was an important part of my achievement right now. Like, I don't think I would be where I am without my national engagement in these societies and learning from the other folks that I came to interact with.
So you feel like all the work, all the efforts, all the late nights working on projects were worth it for you and your career and other people?
Yeah, truly. And also, I think the other sort of soft part of that is that, sometimes when you're dealing with the disease state like pulmonary hypertension, right, sometimes you're just siloed. You're the PH person asking for so much and you just feel siloed. But then when you're interacting with PHA and you're interacting with others through CHEST, then at least you feel part of that bigger community. And I think that kind of gives you a little bit of buoyancy too.
Mm-hmm. No, very good points. So the last question I have for you on this topic is, what do you think early career leaders oftentimes underestimate about the effort it takes to build something and sustain it?
Yeah, I think it's ongoing effort. I think you have to do it if you really want to do it. I think it takes a lot of perseverance. You have to just be very focused, and you have to persevere through a lot of challenges, and be and do it for the right reasons, right? But it does take effort. And just when you think like, okay, I have all my pieces in place and now it's going to flow smoothly, somebody leaves or something else changes, and then you have to not redo the whole thing, but you have to keep training, teaching people the same things again and again and again. But I think that as sort of the program grows and getting more people engaged at the grassroots. For example, my key people were my pharmacist. Then I had my inpatient nursing where we admitted all our PH patients. My inpatient nursing soup, she kind of got interested in PH. So I really used her to develop all the education for the nurses. And then she just took it on herself and then she led it. So I had to do very little of it. So just kind of engaging the people who are interested, giving them their own independence and authority to lead it the way they want to. I think that helps, but it's constant work and effort that goes in, but it really gets easier with time. I think we get better at it and there are more people involved, so doesn't seem that onerous anymore. Yep.
But constant monitoring and keeping the momentum going.
Yeah, exactly. I think
No.
that is so needed. Yeah.
So thank you so much, because I think those are really things that people don't realize. We can build something, but to be able to keep it alive is so essential.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Anna, and I've got a few questions for you, because you're in a different area of pulmonary hypertension than we've just been talking about. You're a leader, but you've also come through so much science, translational work. And how do you feel like you can marry the science and the clinical side of pulmonary hypertension? And what do you recommend about leading in these spaces where these two areas meet?
Thank you for that question. I guess in reflecting on my answer to it, I feel like my science and the questions that I ask are always compelled by observations that I have at the bedside. And so the things that I think about trying to answer and using like my research techniques, whether they're like the wet lab or human studies, are really motivated by things that I'm seeing in clinic or questions that I'm hearing when I go to conferences or somebody else's research that piques my curiosity. So I think that having a research program that's kind of grounded in human observation has been really meaningful to me. That said, doing particularly as the question was about the intersection of science and clinical care, means that we are asking questions in humans and or asking for human specimens to answer our questions. And so, as a scientist, you can't really ask that without the partnership of the clinical team. So the physician taking care of the patient, the study coordinator, or sorry, the clinical care folks, whoever the support staff are, maybe APPs, maybe nurses, maybe respiratory therapists, depending on, the program. But you need to convince the people that are actually taking care of the patients that this is research worth doing, or some trial that the patient's worth participating in. And the second thing is, on the research side, you need to assemble a team of people who really respects that clinical care is happening and is really kind of trumps everything. So your research kind of has to fit around that. And finding a way so that you all work together to achieve a goal of having better care for patients in, 5 years, not just today. So to me, that means a constant communication back and forth with the team taking care of the patients and the research team to make sure that we're doing the best that we can, both for the specific patient that may be enrolled in a research protocol, but more broadly in how we're communicating with each other, with how we are communicating patients, how we're interfacing, like making research visits fit with clinic visits or trying to make things sort of compatible with routine patient care. And that's hard and sort of requires regular feedback from all people and then adjustment. So kind of like Namita said, every time you think you have it right, it needs to change a little bit because something changes and there's, changes really inevitable. So that's sort of my approach to it, is that it all mixes together, and you need all the parts of the orchestra for the symphony to work.
Yes. And as you said, sometimes you need to change the instruments or the musician
Yeah.
along the way. So,
But can I
yeah,
ask Anna?
yeah,
So starting translational research, I mean, it's just there's so many parts to it, right? Like, for example, if you're going to first identifying the right patient, because everybody wants to do it, right? Everybody wants to collect blood and we can run it, but when you actually get down to doing it, it's just so much harder, right? Identifying the right patient, somebody has to collect the data on that patient, and then the samples have to be collected in a timely manner and then processed. And like it's almost like there's this whole throughput that has to be a conveyor
Yeah.
belt that has to be completely smoothly done. So how do you get that started? Like how do you even begin to get those the little pieces in place?
Okay, thanks for that question. For me, it started with people who had more experience than I did, who did some biobanking, in the 80s and 90s, and made a freezer full of blood that I had access to. But the reality is that I use that to make preliminary data to apply for grants that then paid the salary of all the people that now work for me. And you're right, doing it by yourself is possible, like getting starter, you know, making protocols for yourself, drawing blood, spinning it down, freezing it is possible, but very hard. So for mentees, people training who are thinking about a career in translational research, I usually recommend that they find somebody who has funding to do this research and then piggyback on to whatever their mentor is doing. So try to find somebody who's doing work that is at least tangentially related to what you're interested in, so that you can use some of their resources that are usually people and specimen processing equipment to get your own research started.
Mhm. Have some sort of framework
Yeah,
so you
it's
can
hard to start from
launch.
scratch.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you mentioned something. You're thinking about future, not the right now moment. And you said you're trying to influence people to think about how to make things better long term. So the other thing that's better long term oftentimes is completing your big project, getting that paper, but that path to get there sometimes takes an extended period of time. So how do you lead people down that path? And how do you help them to stay resilient as a leader in this field? Because sometimes it is discouraging. You get off
Yes.
on the wrong track, you have a bad outcome. What do you recommend? How do you approach that?
So I try to have both for my mentees, but also for myself, small wins along the way. So I'll give you an example of that. Um, Evan Britton, Eric Austin, and I were funded about 4 years ago to enroll in a prospective study of BMPR2 mutation carriers. And I won't bore you with the details of it, but we have finally enrolled most of the cohort now. And at 3.5 years, we haven't published a single thing from this. And we're getting ready to apply for our next round of funding, and it's going to be really hard until we publish, right? So that's kind of project that I probably never would involve a trainee in, because they need a small win along the way. I had a resident want to do research with me a couple weeks ago, and I realized that the win for him and me is to publish the methods, and we've enrolled remotely in this trial. So I've tried to think creatively about how we can have a win publication that's a little bit easier. And I should have published this like 2 years ago. But now we are. So I try to find easy publications that can spin off from these long-term projects. Sometimes they're review articles, sometimes they're publications of methodology, sometimes they're just an initial publication of the enrollment, not the actual primary endpoint. Those are sort of examples of how I do it. It's very hard to stay focused on something that you think is coming 5 years in the future. So um, both one, having a team that's focused on like actually delivering the enrollment to get us to where we're going to be in 5 years, but also scientifically thinking about what could a small win look like for a trainee, or even for me, who occasionally my ego needs a little bit of a boost too.
That is amazingly wonderful advice because I think that we have to have that positive impact to keep going forward and that positive impact on us and other people. So thank you for that. So
And
now
I
I'm going to
think that is so important to even like not hesitate to try to publish the small things, right? Because that was something nobody told me, and I kept waiting for that complete study, that complete paper, and of course that takes. And by the time the ship has already left the harbor, so to speak, yeah,
and people just lose interest, and you may
yeah.
lose someone who really has a future in this
Mhm.
this area, but they lose interest because they don't get that positive event that they
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also try with trainees I have a lot of like little projects that I've never really written up that are like maybe three-quarters of the way finished. So I try to give them a project like that in addition, that may not be exactly their primary project, but that they could have a publication and get the experience of writing a manuscript, of submitting it to a journal, hopefully not getting rejected, but even that's like a good experience because it
Mhm.
happens to us all. But ultimately getting a paper where they need revisions and learning how to do revisions, and like there's learning in all of that.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's amazing to have the opportunity to do it with somebody who can push you and nudge you in the right
Yeah.
direction rather
Yeah.
than trying to do it on your own the first time.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
So, Anna, you have been so successful in leadership roles in our big organizations, and one of them is PVRI. So that is something I find just an amazing organization that really helps us look at the world in pulmonary hypertension. So how has that shaped your vision of leadership on the local level and the global level? How has that impacted you?
Thank you. That's a great question. I've had, as you mentioned, leadership positions in several different organizations. Probably my first one was I was elected to be the chair of the Pulmonary Circulation Assembly at ATS. That's mostly a scientific job, sort of navigating science and representing the assembly to the larger American Thoracic Society. Um, then next, I was elected to be the chair of the Scientific Leadership Council at PHA, and I really learned a lot from that. I learned about the infrastructure that it takes to advance a patient advocacy organization's mission. And I think what I learned from that I took to the PVRI, which I'll get to in a second, is that I needed to think about what the mission of the organization was and figure out what I could do that aligned with their mission. Because when I took over as president of the PVRI, I hadn't um, I didn't really have a specific agenda for what I was going to enact. But I listened a lot to their mission. Their mission is global advocacy in pulmonary vascular disease and promoting international pulmonary vascular disease research. And that international piece was really new for me, whereas PHA is really, and ATS for that matter, are more US or Europe, Canada, US, maybe Asia. PVRI really has a mission to bring research to people all across the world, and also advocacy in pulmonary hypertension and patient knowledge. And I've really enjoyed thinking about what that looks like and how the PVRI can organize its structure in order to achieve that aim. So this sounds a little bit boring, but what it looked like for me during my presidency was um, promoting Latin American PVRI membership. So that's why we had our meeting in Rio. And that really sort of engaged and shed a really positive light on the work that's happening in Latin America in pulmonary vascular disease. And then the less interesting and less sexy thing was reorganizing the way that scientific work happened in the PBRI. So we made a scientific and medical advisory committee that reviews the task forces and sort of makes sure that the work that they're doing is aligned with the Pulmonary Vascular Research Institute and provides scientific input for international webinars and advocacy things. I think that what I learned is really looking at the mission of the organization and making sure that the work that I was recommending and enacting fit with that mission. Because in the Venn diagram, if you don't have an overlap, like you're not going to achieve what you want and the organization's not going to be happy. But if you can sort of get those two together, you're likely to have a successful leadership role.
No, very good advice. That we make sure we are delivering the product that people need and want.
Right. And that organization is set up to deliver on and has money and funding to support.
And that's the only way we can be successful, of course.
Yeah.
So looking at what I asked and your responses, what I see from both of you is that you want the right ingredients. You want to make sure that you have all the working pieces that you need to be successful. And then you need to engage people in a positive way where they feel that they're playing an important role and making a difference, whether it's by publications or by education. Both of you said similar things from very different perspectives. So the way I saw it is you're looking what you need, and then you're almost leading from behind and making sure everything's going in the right direction. And I thought that was really impactful when I listened to both of you coming from these very different perspectives. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your insights.
Can I add on something, Jean?
Yeah, please.
I think that one of the things my prior mentor had mentioned to me is that you're only going to be successful in leadership when everybody else around you is successful. And so a big thing that I really look in my roles to do is to elevate the people around me and to figure out how I can help them achieve their own career goals. And sometimes that might be evolving outside of the organization or to some new position. Like it always kind of makes me a little bit sad when one of my research coordinators, goes to medical school or something. But when they're meeting their own goals, like you've done a good thing for the world, and it's important to remember that. But sometimes it's, finding ways to recognize that people in my division are ready for promotion, or it might be time for me to step down so that somebody else can have the opportunity that I had. So I really do try to find ways to make everybody around me successful in my leadership roles.
Yeah, I agree. My philosophy is like a little bit more simplistic. I just say that good people are going to rise, right? And if I can be part of their journey, then that's a good thing for me. So it's always, I think we have to help people achieve where they want to go. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
And truly, that's our wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many times, we are doing things to advance our own careers, of course. That's part of the journey. But the wins along the way are when our junior colleague gets their first big lecture or publishes in the New England Journal. And that is maybe more impactful on our psyche about success than our own wins for our own advancement. So it's amazing, and it's much like having your own kids that you're helping along the way, and their successes are yours.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask some really hard questions now. So I want to know about your challenges. We talked about like our framework of how to lead. But what are the greatest challenges you've faced in leadership? And do you have any pearls on how to deal with those challenges? So I'm going to start with Namita.
So I think my biggest challenge, which is still a challenge, so I look forward to hearing from both of you on that, is how to manage up, right? I think managing the team that you build and sort of working with your peers, I think that is very easy, but managing up is always a bit harder. So I would definitely like to hear suggestions on that.
Anna, do you have any suggestions?
when I took over as division director, my Department of Medicine chair was pretty clear in her expectations for me. And, but I had also been coached prior to that to say, like in that first meeting, what are your expectations and how do you like to have communications? What do you want to know about? How do we work? How do you envision us working well together? And I think like everything else, having a frank conversation can be really helpful, particularly early in your relationship, because otherwise we get ingrained in our behavior and it's almost harder to change. It's like sometimes it's harder to say to somebody who I've known for a long time, explain how my last name is pronounced than like the first time I met them. We've all had that experience with patients. Um, so for me, it's trying to set expectations and understand what the expectations are from my leaders pretty early in our relationship turns out to be helpful.
And I think for me, it's always hard to ask for help, and it's always hard to ask for feedback that's real, right? So I think we have to always have that open mindset to say, okay, we may not have done it the best way for everyone. So we have to hear and actually listen to people and not take it personally. And that's something that you have to learn how to do because it doesn't come naturally to us as human beings. And I don't know if anyone else has had that experience that really you have to open your mind to any kind of real feedback and then be willing to change and adapt to meet that need of your group.
Hmm. Sometimes we have blind spots, things you hadn't even thought about. And I'm always kind of thankful when somebody points out a blind spot because I guess it helps me get better.
Absolutely. And it's sometimes you think you're on the right path and you're like, oh, but I forgot that one important person or that one important part.
Hmm.
And overlooking that may have really changed a relationship between other people. So
Yeah.
I think that we just have to be open enough that people talk to us and tell us. Because sometimes when you go up the leadership chain, you um, you close some of those doors. So being able to balance that is an essential part, at least in my experience. Dr. Sid?
So how do you facilitate that though?
I think that you have to make sure people know that they can talk to you and that you won't shut them down. And that sometimes it will be at the most inopportune moment that the person needs to talk to you, but you'll need to take your 5 minutes, listen, and don't make any judgment and just take it in and then think about it instead of reacting.
Mhm.
That's how I've learned how to do it over time, and I will keep reinventing that. But I'm hopeful that I can hear what people are saying and then not react in the negative way, but rather hear and try to figure out what they're saying and what I can do to adjust or correct whatever issue they're having in the best to my ability. Anna, as a division director leader, I'm sure that happens all the time because every day something is probably happening that you need to address. How do you maintain that level of openness so people can come to you, but also make sure that you have some boundaries? How have you done that?
Um, I think I had a good preparation in two ways. One is taking care of patients. For instance, patients regularly tell me things, I'm sure as they have you all, that I inside am a little bit like, oh my. But outside, you can't do that. That's not really fair to them. So I just have to keep my same poker face on. And then the second is, I think having teenage kids has been very helpful because there's just a constant barrage of drama and crises. And I kind of learned that some things you don't have to participate in. And like you can watch movies. You don't have to participate and be a central character in all the movies. So,
That is a really good point.
Good one. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
so I don't have to absorb that. And this is another one. I have a daughter who's like very grounded and has a much better sense of boundaries and self. And I was like, I don't know, I was yelling at her about something a couple years ago. And when she was young, she was like 15, she looked at me and she was like, Mom, that sounds like an issue, not an ish me. And I was like,
Oh,
that's a good
oh.
phrase, but it's one that I think about a lot when people come to me. I'm like, I can try to help you with your problems, and I want to do that, but I cannot solve everybody's problems for them. And I also can't get wrapped up in their problems, if that makes sense. Like I need to help them find a way forward, but I can't participate in it.
Mhm, mhm. And sometimes it's hard to figure out when someone just needs to be heard
Yeah.
versus you need to act on it.
Yeah. And a lot of times people do want to be heard and have their feelings validated, just like we all do. You know, they
Mhm,
want you to be like, nod your head and just acknowledge that that's a challenge and there may not be a solution and they may be perfectly okay with you not having a solution, but just the act of listening can be really valuable.
mhm. No, very important points.
One thing I did get better with, and a little bit might have been cultural here. I grew up in India, so you don't really give a lot of feedback or whatever. But now, as I kind of evolved and I kind of got better at just, when somebody, even just a simple procedure, thoracentesis for the 10th time a fellow is doing, and if it goes smoothly and well, I never leave the room, and it comes naturally. It's not like made up, like, good job, that was smooth as butter or something like that. Just kind of, sort of I've gotten better at sort of highlighting the positives. And I think what I learned along that way was it was actually very good for me too, because it highlighted for me how well my day was going. So many
Gratitude.
procedures went smoothly. We got the diagnosis right so many times. It was a good day.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think your point is really important that as a leader in whatever community we're in, our voice matters and it really matters to people who are working with us.
Yeah.
And if we don't express our appreciation and if we don't guide them and verbalize it, sometimes they feel like they're not heard or seen. And so I think what you just said is even more important than probably we all know that it really makes a difference to those people we're helping along the way.
Yeah. I think even small gestures, like when somebody emails somebody, congratulations, just chiming in and being like, wow, this is amazing, can go a long way to elevating other people and giving them some positive feedback. Like, as you said, your voice really does matter.
So we talked a lot about what we're doing for other people, what teams we're building, and all of the efforts we're making to build our programs and our research and our collaborations. But what are we doing to maintain ourselves to be able to keep doing this and to have a long career life? So I know that Anna is an exerciser. Is that your favorite thing to do to refocus yourself, or do you have other things you like to do?
And it depends on the time of the day. I like to start my day off with exercise. That's like, I don't normally like to exercise the end of the day because I'm just tired and spent. But I do oftentimes see my friends when I'm exercising. So I find that to be very energizing. Um, and then the second thing is I still like to cook at night. Like I probably should do it less, but I enjoy the like act of manually doing something. It just is a different brain space.
Mhm.
And I like that. So
What
it's my
about you, Dr. Sud?
What do I do? I think I exercise regularly too. I like my morning walks. It's just one of those things that I do. And then, cooking, I prioritize a lot of stuff, right? It's very important for me to find some time to read, or if there's a concert I want to catch or a play I want to catch, I just make time for that. So it just becomes like one of those things that I'm going to do because life is short and I'm going to do that. And then I come back feeling a little bit refreshed and more
Mm,
focused on whatever I have to do at work.
no. So I think we all have to find what we really enjoy, what's our thing, because that takes our brain to a different space. So then when we come back to work and all of that we're dealing with, we can be positive and also it opens your mind to new ideas. if we never have any quiet time away from work, we can't be creative. So I think those are really, really important. So I'm going to end at this point our great discussion, and I'm going to ask both of you, what is the most rewarding part of this journey that we're actively going through with leadership in pulmonary hypertension? So Anna, what do you find is the most rewarding?
I think that one of the greatest joys of having been in this space for a long time is seeing whether it's my own trainees or other trainees or people that I've worked with now achieving in their own right. It makes me like incredibly happy. And I know even so many times I have had very little to do with their trajectory, but just seeing people grow up, give back to the field, and achieve their dreams and their goals for themselves is really meaningful to me. So no, and knowing that I have to say selfishly, knowing that occasionally I had a little bit to do with it, I really like.
No, it's like the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Dr. Sid?
I think for me, the most gratifying part has been to sort of to be able to maintain a certain level of quality in the clinical care that we provide. And, I've moved a lot of institutes, unfortunately, kind of end up landing at the same place where you can be consistent quality care. And then you're training the physicians to do it that way as well. And I think the other part that I really have been very grateful for is to continue to be a part of a national conversation on this disease state. And I think just sort of my engagement with other societies has enabled me to do that. And that I think I find very gratifying.
No, that's wonderful. And for me, it's very similar to see people you've worked with making progress and then extending your reach. It's almost like this whole web of people you've influenced along the way, and you have been one person who can then reach so many other people. It's amazing what we can do through that positive interaction and influence. And it's through this great community we have that we've been able to do that. So I've had such a wonderful time talking to you guys. And I hope that everyone in the audience has enjoyed this discussion because it really is priceless. You never really get to talk about these things on a regular basis. So I hope you'll join us for some of our future webinars. We're going to talk about many things that you might be interested in: mentorship, balancing all of this, the art of negotiation, and innovation with research and advocacy. And then we're going to end our webinar series by talking about billing and understanding how we're impacting our institutional bottom line. So thank you so much. Thank you, Gossamer, for supporting this important endeavor. And thank you, Anna and Dr. Sood, for joining me tonight in this great discussion about leadership.
Thank you for your leadership in putting this together and leading such an important and insightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean. Always.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.